Well, we're turning our attention to, well, it's a related matter, really, and it's security. Just yesterday, some background, a lecturer at this Mandamfodi University presented a paper on his research into banditry in the country, and it was titled, "I Am a Bandit, a Decade of Research in Zamfara Bandit Den." And part of the highlights of that paper was, that research paper was the fact that he says there are 120 bandits gangs, and each of them have 500 AK-47 rifles. So if you multiply that 50 by 6, that's from Zamfara to Sokoto, Katsina, Kaduna, Kebbi, and Niger. You can do the math, right? 500 times 6, and then 120 gangs. That's 60,000 AK-47 rifles with 120 bandit gangs in Nigeria. And that has again brought up a conversation around firearms. On the one hand, the proliferation, not of even light firearms, AK-47, those are heavy firearms, and what the citizens can do. Some governors saying, protect yourself. Some saying, you might need to arm yourselves, or at least the interpretation which some people have gotten from that. Well, there's someone who has been working on firearms and, you know, the kind of laws that should be amended such that the procurement of firearms is perhaps stricter, the kind of levies or the kind of punishment for acquiring firearms illegally as well was put into that. But let's speak with Honorable Adijaro Adeogun this morning. He joins us virtually on the program. He is the Deputy Chairman, House Committee on National Security and Intelligence. Thank you for joining us today, Honorable. Well, I'm sure you've seen the recent trend since we last had a conversation with you on this program. So first, let me ask, how is that amendment going at the National Assembly? Honorable Adiogo, are you there? Okay, I guess we'll work on that one.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Oh, great. I can hear you now. Please go ahead.
Thank you for having me. Like you asked, how far has the bill gone? It's gone through second reading, and it's been referred to one or two committees. I'm in the process of reconsidering and then putting the dot and the t's together before it can be represented to the House. The process is ongoing. And I'm sure before November, it will be presented back to the House and then it will pass.
So in the context of that research paper I just referenced, 60,000 AK-47 rifles in the hands of 120 bandit gangs, how does that amendment, I mean, if it does, how does it remedy that challenge which we have, which I referenced?
I think my position has been that there should be some kind of equality of forces. You need to balance. If you have 60,000 rifles in the hands of criminals and then the law-abiding citizens just have practically at best day guns, you find that they're not equally poised, and it gives the criminals a lot of advantage. So I think what we're saying is law-abiding citizens, once they meet the prescribed conditions, should be allowed to bear weapons. Let them be able to protect themselves. Let them be able to deter, because deterrence is important in security.
So if you could just walk us through some of the highlights of that bill. I don't want to take it for granted that our viewers are abreast of what is contained in that amendment. So in terms of acquiring firearms, the age of acquiring it, the whole process, what do you seek to achieve?
What we're considering is the Firearms Act, which is F28 of the Law of Federation mentioned 2004. It's an existing act. So what we're doing is amending it to strengthen it and not, introduce certain new provisions. The law, as said now, actually allows Nigerians to bear weapons. All it does is not describe what is prohibited and what is not prohibited. So what we're amending is to provide one for the age. The previous act, the existing act, provides for 17 years and we're raising it to 18. And then now we're making surveillance much easier by requesting for a national identification number, BVN, and also for other things that make identification and surveillance easier. Then we're introducing some other things that will ensure that anyone who is licensed to bear a weapon should be trained to bear a weapon. You have to belong to a rifle club. you have to at least have proficiency certificate that's renewable every year, so that it's not like you have a weapon and you can't use it. We just feel like weapons in the hand of an untrained person is as dangerous as it being in the hands of a lunatic. Then we're making provision for local production of firearms, because as of now, the Drug Firearms Act does not encourage local production. The truth is, we've seen weapons being manufactured in Benue, manufactured in institutes. We think that the law should mainstream this local production, so that we will reduce the need for illicit weapon manufacturing and then the need for people to import illegal weapons into our country. I think those are the major highlights.
There are always questions about acquiring firearms, and people will be quick to reference what they've seen play out in the United States, for example, the whole gun violence and the rest. And I'd just like you to touch on some of the measures you have included in that amendment to ensure stricter monitoring in terms of who can get a firearm, psychological evaluation. I know we rarely talk about that, but it's quite important. So what are the measures put in place in that amendment to ensure that only the right people can get access, or people that are mentally or psychologically able to handle firearms acquire those firearms?
The first thing is that it is not, firearms license is not as of right the conditions that must be met. Like I said, to join a rifle club, it's not every Dick, Jack, and Harry can just walk into a rifle club for membership. And then it has to be approved by the Inspector General of Police. Even for day guns, for nozzle loading weapons, you still need approval of the governor of the state and the commissioner of the police in each state. So it's one that does not allow anybody to bear weapons without showing responsibility, showing the capability to restrict excessive use of such weapons. So I think the whole idea is we want to ensure that only people who have the right psychological state of mind, people who can actually be trusted to use it as prescribed by the law, will be licensed to bear weapons.
Perhaps to get some sort of psychological evaluation and maybe a pass from psychological institution. How long is the duration? I mean, is it in the past 6 months, past 1 year? Because that's important, just to clear that one.
Yeah.
I didn't get that, sorry.
No, I didn't quite get your question.
Well, the question is about psychological evaluation, which was a previous one. Will they have to...
Yeah, because it has to be not more than 6 months psychological certificate obtained from a government-recognized designated hospital. So it has to be from facilities that are recognized by the Inspection of Police or designated by any appropriate arm of government. So it's not just anybody walking into any private clinic to obtain a certificate, no.
So in actual fact, Honorable, it doesn't make acquiring a weapon easier, does it?
The intention is not to make the acquisition easier. It's to streamline the process so that only those who are able to, those who meet all the requirements are able to obtain it, at least be able to protect themselves. And the flip side is that at the same time increases the penalty for illegal possession of weapons. So it's not like anybody possesses a weapon without a license can go scot-free. No. You mentioned 60,000 rifles in the hands of people. I think the law makes the penalty more punitive so that such persons, if caught, will not have the difficulties, will face time in prosecuting them.
So in prosecuting, for example, if these bandits are arrested, we'll have to use that same Firearms Act of 2004 to prosecute them. And you think that the penalties are not strict enough in that one, right?
Yes, I think we're just actually making it stricter, and then making sure that the courts can actually use the law as amended to actually give them stricter jail terms.
Okay, so let's see if we can balance this equation and still referring to those 60,000 rifles. Of course, we'll expect to get some clarity or some concurrence or otherwise from government regarding this, because I know that government, of course, has some data on this as well. So 60,000 AK-47 in the hands of bandits. We don't know how much we have in the hands of law-abiding citizens, as it were. So clearly there needs to be a balance of force. Does this law account for what kind of weapon you can get? I mean, what kind of level does it make? I mean, does it make provisions for acquiring an AK-47, for example, or just for light arms? What does it say? AK-47 is a light arm, so it's not about light arms. It's actually saying about concealable weapons.
Any weapon that is automatic or semi-automatic is not licensable. So AK-47 is an automatic rifle, so it's not licensable. It only provides, for weapons that can be held and publicly known. So you can't even apply for a license to hold a pistol because it's concealable. So we want to say which people who bear arms can, when they're bearing it, others will know that this person is armed and dangerous. So it's not something that can be concealed. And then we'll specify the velocity, which means how far can it go. We'll specify even the length of the weapon that can be, be licensed. So it's got to be up to 16 cm, so that it's long enough to be held in a bag and not short enough to be held on a body.
Okay, I'll also come to some of the, downsides that people have referenced. But does this balance the equation, as it were, eventually, if you have an aggressor with an AK-47 and the best you can afford or the best you can get under the law is a Dane gun or a simple rifle?
No, a double-barrel weapon can be licensed. A pump-action rifle can be licensed. And our intention is not to proliferate weapons. It's to create deterrence. It's to give the other party, the law-abiding citizen, a chance. So the whole idea is, if someone is, coming to attack you and able to at least tell the person, delay his attack, it gives you a chance to life better than you just being harmless.
Right. That's what I'm saying. And the point is, AK-47 against a shotgun, really, what chances are there? Which is why I still say, does that balance the equation well enough? Because an AK-47 will always be an AK-47.
You see, sometimes you have to understand about weaponry. It is not the capacity of the weapon. It is the ability of the user. If you have someone who is well-versed in the usage of firearms and is bearing a pump-action weapon with 6 rounds, I think he probably can outgun a man with AK-47 with very little or no expertise.
Yet again, there's a condition attached to that. But I'd like us to look at this, the whole scheme of things. And I'm glad you said that this is not to even worsen the proliferation of firearms, which we already have, because people reference how we got here. The fact that, they reference people who had to acquire arms as a result of maybe cattle rustling, some for political reason. And when that ended, they had to look for ways to use those firearms, which is why we're seeing all the kidnapping and the rest. But it's good you say that this is not to even tip us further down that line. But in terms of the solution to the security challenge we have, there have been questions as to whether or not the problem is firearms or the lack of it, firepower and the rest. So to what extent really will this solve the insecurity challenge we have in the country? You have done some work in that area. Just how much of this problem will this solve, and how do we need to even close the gap that will be left?
You see, I think I want to make reference to the professor at ABU that you said did the research and identified the 120 bandit groups. It took him 10 years, which means the problem has been there for 10 years. What did we do for 8 out of those 10 years? We did absolutely nothing. The problem with us is that we allow problems to fester. Little things that we can solve at an early stage, we do nothing, allow them to go. And then even when government tried to intervene, rather than confronting the bandits, what states like Zamfara, Katsina did was rather invited them to dinner and then offered to pay them on some kind of fake amnesty. So what we're doing is we escalate situations rather than solving problems. So going forward, we need to actually be proactive. Intelligence hasn't actually done enough for us in Nigeria. And where they even have intelligence, the action agencies are not acting as fast as possible. We need to take quick actions. We need to at least eliminate problems at early stages before they fester into something bigger. I think that's where we should start from. We're doing a lot now trying to, over the past few days, I think the military has been striking them in the northwest of Nigeria in Zamfara. The action should have been done like 2 years ago, when we would require this much energy, would require this much force. So we need to actually be quicker at taking action.
So what changed? Referencing what we've seen, I heard happen in Zamfara in just past few days. We didn't recruit. Imagine we didn't change the whole army or the whole military, or I don't think something hugely remarkable happened, except perhaps the acquisition of the Super Tucano jet. So what quite changed with that one, such that we're seeing the results we're seeing?
First, I mentioned Zamfara. Let's take Zamfara for example. Don't forget that the governor of Zamfara State actually granted them amnesty at some point. So the grant of amnesty delays the actions of the security forces. All he's basically said is, I've solved the problem. So I think maybe for some reasons, the agencies themselves believe what he has done. They felt it would work, but it never worked. That should not have happened in the first instance. So I think what has changed is the political dimension to it. Moving it from what a governor can just feel like, okay, it's my state, I have a right to take decisions, even if they were the wrong decisions, to the government feeling like this has, gone bigger than you. And I know that the governor of Zamfara State himself has realized that it's bigger than him, and has actually come to terms with the security, with the military and the police on the need to actually be sterner and taking bigger actions.
Referring to, or at least seeing what played out in Zamfara, the governor of Katsina also recently coming out to say that, well, with the benefit of hindsight, maybe he will not have granted that sort of amnesty to the bandits. Seeing what has played out afterwards. And I can't help but remember that in Borno State as well, you have a lot of terrorists, or ex-terrorists this time around, surrendering. And there's been that debate about what to do with the terrorists or ex-terrorists, as the case may be. And on the back of the Katsina State governor saying, with the benefit of hindsight, maybe he'll not have granted amnesty. Are the dynamics different here? And what do you think should be done in the case of Borno, which has been the epicenter of terrorism in Nigeria?
I'll advise caution. Yeah, there are two sides to it. One, the assumption is that the actions of the military in the Northeast has made the area inhabitable for terrorists, and that's why they're coming out. But the truth is, even where they come out, do you just pat them in the back and thank them for surrendering their weapons, or do you actually let them face the full wrath of the law? A criminal is a criminal. It's like someone robs or kidnaps or kills someone, and then it comes out, okay, I'm no longer doing it. Nigeria is not a church. It's only the church that can forgive. Nigeria as a state should not forgive criminality. It should actually let the law take the decision. So what's happening in Borno State is that we adopted the wrong approach. And the truth is, we will set in place another role of the dice. These guys are going to come out. I've had cause to interact with young people, in some part of the country, people who said that the weapon is like a pen. The journalist does not drop his pen unless it's given under that means of livelihood. So the man with a weapon will never drop his weapon unless it's found that means of livelihood, because that's the only thing they know how to do. That's the only way they know how to make money. They're not going to leave it. So, just welcoming them back because they said, what is the proof that they have actually not changed strategy? We need to be more careful.
I was just a little curious as to how, I don't know whether you're optimistic about regulation. When you look at how our regulatory agencies have run a number of schemes that are really important to us, that has to do largely with identity, for instance, a driver's license, national identity card, and a number of other schemes. How optimistic are you that with regulation we can get gun ownership right? I don't know.
Okay, the question I ask is what is the alternative? Should we just hold our hands and do nothing? We need to look at what BVN has done to the banking sector. You have to look at what NIM is doing. They haven't been perfect, but it streamlines everything. Before, people could have 10,000 bank accounts and then they can't be linked together. With BVN, they can be linked now. And I think the same thing that BVN has done to the banking sector is what regulation can do to weapons control.
Yeah, because you've also talked about getting psychological evaluation in a place where, documents can be forged. COVID-19 tests, as, mandatory as they were and as scrutinized as they were, and, in terms of even standardization, what was required of us and what was required by other countries, we continue to put our foot down. But still, people have found a way to forge, in some instances, things that are mandatory. How do you think that we're going to get round, making people do the right things if really we're going to go down this route of gun ownership and looking at how vital, this is, because we're talking about lives here?
I think, part of the problem we have in Nigeria is over-dependence on paper. Now, if you go to a medical doctor that's approved by government and it issues a certificate online directly to the agency, directly to the authorities, there'll be no need to forge because it's paperless. Nobody gets to know what's written. So we need to actually move beyond this paper thing that allows forgery to move into one to which actually deal with authorities using communications, using availability of the internet.
I'm glad that you're thinking through a lot of the loopholes, because there are definitely questions that will arise. Would you say that it will be permissible for Nigerians to, say, carry their guns about, say, for instance, those who are traveling by road and maybe they say they have the fear of kidnappers, would it be permissible for them to have their guns on them, or should they just keep them at home?
No, your weapon should be like your laptop. Anywhere you're going, you go with it. It's for protection, so you don't know where you could be attacked, so you should be able to protect yourself anyway.
You don't see it as a potential problem?
I see it as deterring anyway. Let everybody who has a weapon be able to get a weapon anywhere they're going. Even if you'll be on a plane, submit it the same way government agents are able to submit their weapons when they're getting on aircrafts. Now, it shouldn't be a problem. You see, where the problem arises is where people conceal, where it's not known that you're bearing it. If you're bearing it, if you're carrying it on the road and you get a police checkpoint and they're able to show that you're licensed, to show that you're generally licensed to bear a weapon, it won't be a problem. What's the sense of having a weapon if it's in your bedroom and then you're attacked along Lagos-Ibadan Expressway? It's worthless then.
What sort of reception has the amendments which you propose to this bill generated? Do you think you're going to get the support needed to pass the bill?
I think it's more of the support of Nigerians because, before passage, it will have to go through public hearing. So we will get to know from members of the public. But from, after the newspaper reports, I know, I've got a lot of calls from Nigerians who are actually happy that such a thing is happening, because I feel like it's something that's long overdue.
Well, it's remarkable that you talk about the support of Nigerians. It's very I was very specific with the question for a reason, because much as a bill might gain popular support amongst the generality of the people, you will still need the support of your members to be able to see it through. So what sort of support have you received from amongst your members?
Well, I've spoken to quite a number of people and they're happy about it, but we must remember that the legislature is a place where there's lobbying. So it now depends on the capability of the sponsor of the bill. In this case, I think we actually have two bills that were consolidated. And then so we're going to get together and ensure that, we talk to members and convince them on the need for the improvement in they have.
Well, we'll see how things eventually pan out on the floor of the House and also in general the National Assembly, because we do know that, as Kaide did point out, when it's passed in the House, you will still need concurrence from the Senate. But we have to thank you very much at this point for coming on the program this morning. Honorable Adejoro Adeogun is the Deputy Chairman, House Committee on National Security and Intelligence. Well, let's take some of your mails. Thank you once again for coming on the program.